What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Classic Octane. I am Taylor. So today we have the Drift Vette pulled into the shop. Two main projects I want to knock out. One of them I'm still waiting for parts on, which is going to be installing a NRG quick release as well as an NRG steering wheel. But I am waiting for one little spacer that's on the way. Hopefully we'll be here in the next couple of days. The other main project is a full hydraulic handbrake setup. So let me walk you through all the parts I'm going to use for that. So after weighing out a few different options, I decided I wasn't quite ready to fork out the money for a true dual caliper setup. So I'm going to be running an inline hydraulic handbrake. So I went with this kit from Parts Shop Max. Comes with a mounting bracket made specifically for the C5 Corvette, Willwood master cylinder, as well as the handle. I also went ahead and got their ABS delete line kit, which I'll walk you guys through exactly how this works. But basically we're going to be eliminating the factory ABS block right in front of the engine, and that will actually allow us to utilize the factory hard lines to run our rear hydraulic handbrake. So all the brakes and everything should work as normal with no ABS. We yank on this handle, it should lock just the two rear calipers. That way we're not having to fork out a whole bunch of money for an extra caliper setup. This also allows me to retain my factory parking brake, which I like the idea of, because if I park on a hill or something like that, if I have a dual caliper setup that doesn't retain that, it makes it kind of hard to keep the car from rolling. So this is the setup we're gonna run with for now. I'm gonna walk you guys through how to install it. So once you get this bezel out of the way, it's super easy to remove. Mine actually didn't even have any hardware. I'm not sure what happened to it. You get easy access to all of the studs that this mounts to. So the point of this is it actually uses a bunch of the factory mounting studs and hardware to get this thing right in the perfect position. So there are 5 total holes. These 3 are the 3 studs that go around your little rubber boot. There's one that's back here to the actual mount of the armrest, and then one that's at a 90-degree angle that you can access right under the right side here. So obviously we don't want to put this on top of the wiring or anything, so I'm going to get this kind of fudged around into place. I believe I'm going to have to cut and modify this little rubber boot that goes around the shifter. I want to keep as much of that as possible because it actually does a pretty good job of sound deadening and also stopping a lot of hot air coming up through the transmission tunnel into the car. So yeah, we'll get some of this wiring kind of shoved over, get this thing mounted into place, and then we'll see how much modifying we have to do to this rubber boot. So here's what it looks like mounted up. I wasn't quite able to get a washer on this one, but it does still have a nut on it, so it's going to be totally fine. This thing is rock solid. I'm actually super impressed with that. For the connectors, I have a little banjo fitting that comes off this direction, and I have a little 7/16 adapter to the little AN line. So that's where our 2 lines are going to run off. They're going to run around the left side of the shifter and then towards the front of the car. So we'll kind of tuck them in nice and tight so that the center console can kind of go over it, and then they'll pop in, and I'll show you here in a little bit how we're going to cross over and where we're going to pop through the firewall. But I did just go ahead and trim off a little bit of that rubber boot. So basically from here, maybe a 1/2 inch or so down this line, and then cut back to retain that functionality. So let me show you where the lines are going to run. So we have a 3/8 outlet. That's going to be our longer of the 2 hoses. That's going to go all the way up to the ABS module. The 7/16 20 is the shorter of the 2. That's going to go to our factory master cylinder. So they're going to run right next to each other. I'm going to zip tie them up right in front of the pedals across here, and then where we're going to punch through the firewall is that existing hole right there. So that's where the factory hood release cables go through. There is a little rubber grommet that I push through that we will kind of cut and place around there again. This is fiberglass, so it's not really going to like cut into our steel cables, but there is a factory grommet there, so we're going to put one right back so we don't get some like hot exhaust fumes and stuff coming through that. But that's where we can go through. We're not going to have to drill any holes or anything. So that's going to pop out directly under the factory brake booster. Like I said, the shorter of the 2 lines is going to go to our master cylinder. I'm like 95% sure it's this front outlet. I'll have to double check that in a minute. And then the other 2 are going to run up to this unit, which is the ABS module I've been talking about. So let me get the lines kind of in place, and then we'll move on to figuring out which ones of these goes to which part of the T, and try to walk through that process to make sure I get it all straight, and then I can explain it all to you guys. Both of the lines are pulled through the firewall now. I did verify that it is this front port on the master cylinder that we are going to be replacing. Kit comes with this M12, I believe, banjo fitting. So we're gonna be able to pull that out, put this in, and then on behind this little cap right here, pull it off, is our little AN adapter that will run to this line. So that'll be that side done. The other side runs up here. That's where it gets a little bit more complicated. So let me pull this hard line off, go ahead and get all this hardware and stuff in place, and we'll move on to that section. So we're ready to move on to the ABS module now. So a quick rundown of all of these lines. These right here and right here, these two, are running to the master cylinder. This one right here is even marked on here. It says MC2. That is the line we just disconnected. So that I can pull off, and it's completely useless. I'll pull it right off the car. It's only about a foot long. We'll get rid of it. The new line that's going to be the master cylinder feed is what's coming from our Handbrake master cylinder. So that's that stainless line that we just ran through the car. I'll show you the rear T-block first. So that is going to go right there, right into our AN line, and then we have two outlets. These two outlets are for our rear brake hard lines, which are these two lines right here. So this one I believe is the right rear, and this one is the left rear right down here. So our T will go this line, and this line for the rear brakes. For the front brakes, somewhat similar. The line right here is coming from the master cylinder. That's then gonna go to this big silver adapter that comes in the kit. Then we have our two outlets that are gonna be running to the left front and right front, which is this line that my finger's touching right now. And then it's hard to see buried in there, but it's on the side of the block down there. That's the two front lines. So I'll have to do a little bit of bending and stuff to get them in place. Hopefully that's a good explanation. When I have it all hooked up, it'll make even more sense. Here's a look at everything all hooked up. You do have to bend some of the hard lines, so make sure to take your time that you don't want to end up kinking one of those and having to replace it. There is enough room to work, but it is, kind of fiddly. It took me maybe half an hour or so. What I still need to do is go through and zip tie all the lines. We obviously don't want any of these getting into the belt. That would be a bad day. So now that we've disconnected all of the brake lines, we need to completely bleed the system. So I'm going to take time to go ahead and flush it all out as well, meaning I'm going to suck all of this old nasty brake fluid out of the master cylinder. I'm going to use a pressure bleeder or power bleeder. I have this one from Motive I've had for many years. I think there's a multitude of different brands. I'll throw a link to this one in the description below if you guys are curious, but I am still waiting for my little adapter. Basically what you do is you put brake fluid into that reservoir. It's got a little pump on the top. You pump it up to, I don't know, I'll have to look it up, maybe 15, 20 PSI, something like that. And what it does is it puts positive pressure on the master cylinder, just like you would be if you were pressing the brakes. And in theory, you can now start at the right rear and go ahead and crack open the bleeder, and it should be enough pressure to push all of the old fluid and air all the way out of the system. And you just work your way around the car, right rear, right front, left front, get all the air out of the system, which I've heard can be a little bit of a pain. So once that adapter comes in, we'll get the car in the air, pull the wheels off, and I'll take you guys through the bleeding procedure. My adapter came in and we are ready to go. So how I'm going to start off is actually sucking out all of this nasty old brake fluid out of the reservoir, fill it up with some fresh stuff. Another thing of a benefit of this style bleeder, I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday or not, but this is half full of fresh new brake fluid. So this will actually keep our master cylinder topped off the whole time, so we don't have to worry about that running dry. So that's all set up. Thinking about this overnight, I decided I'm going to actually bleed the Handbrake master cylinder first. So I disconnected the little AN line that's running up here. Because if you think about it, probably 80–90% of the air in this system is in that line and in that master cylinder, because that's all completely dry right now. So I don't want to have to pump all of that air all the way through the rest of the braking system. I want to bleed this section first, get all the air out, make sure that's all good to go. We will then reconnect that line and start to bleed at the calipers to get the rest of the air out. So I'm going to start with that, and then I'll bring you guys back when we're making some progress. I'm going to try filming this last one for you guys so you can see why this power bleeder is absolutely worth its weight in gold, especially as a one-man operation. So there's just a little bit of air in each line from when we had it cracked open. So what we can do is put our little wrench on here, put our little hose, try to figure out a position where you guys will be able to see. And all we really need to do is crack it open until we see an air bubble come through. So you see it's cracked. Fluid starts pumping out. But I don't know if you can tell, it is still pumping fluid through here. So I'm just kind of waiting for it to get to real fresh fluid. Might give it an extra pump or two on the pressure. All you really need is about, I don't know, let's call it 10 to anywhere between 10 and 15 psi is good. You don't really need to go much higher than that. Well, shucks, we're not going to get an air bubble on this one, but that's it. So when I did, you start the right rear, work your way around the car. When you crack it open, you'll see fluid start to come out, and then on each of the other three, there was like blah, 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 like 4 quick bubbles that came through, and then it was fresh fluid after that. So that is the air we introduced up here at the ABS pump, making its way all the way through the system. So in theory, right now, the brake should be fully bled all by myself in a matter of 10 minutes. Now we can get in here and see how our pedal feels. Oh yeah, that is rock solid, like within an inch of the top. Oh, heck yeah. So that is like instant pressure, right? Like no pressure at all, boom. Like I can actually hear the rear calipers moving. So that is sweet. There's also some adjustment on the throw of this thing as well. I think we can kind of fine tune that because I want basically as little movement as possible to get it to lock, but obviously with no residual pressure when it's released. That feels really good. I think we may have nailed the bleed on the first try. That Motive bleeder, again, this is not at all sponsored or anything, absolutely worth its weight in gold. Walk you guys through the final install real quick. So all the lines are zip tied away. We want to make sure we don't get into the belt, the exhaust, the steering, anything like that. And then on the inside of the car, basically the same scenario. We just want the lines to be up out of the way. We don't want them near the pedals where you're going to end up kicking them or trying to rip them out or anything like that. So zip tied up nice and close to not only each other, but also the car itself. And then I don't know if I showed this earlier, but the center console, the cup holder section does pop right out. So you're able to reinstall that little bezel piece without any real modifications. The only thing I'm still looking into is because of where the lines are run, my little leather kind of shifter boot can't really go down in place, but that really doesn't make all that much of a difference. That rubber one down below that we modified, that's the one that makes the biggest difference from like noise and heat. But I mean, this whole installation all went pretty darn smooth, and it's also really clean. I'm digging the way it looks. I threw the wheels back on. What do you say we go take this thing for a test drive and see how this thing works? The first thing I'm going to do is just try to back out of the garage like a couple of feet, pull the handbrake and see if it stops us. Go forward a little bit. Okay, that's a good sign. Alright. Let me go out to a little testing ground that's not my neighborhood, and we'll give it a real test. I don't know if you can hear that, but my wheel bearings all of a sudden have really started to make an unhappy noise. So I'll be ordering some of those this afternoon. But I'm just going to test this anyway. So we'll try in a straight line first. Kind of. And that was a pretty soft pull. Let me try it again with a harder pull. Oh yeah. No problem in a straight line. here. Oh my god, that's a lot of fun. All right, let's go ahead and just evacuate the area. Handbrake works absolutely flawless. We're back from the test drive and I learned two things. One, hydraulic handbrakes, incredibly fun. I mean, that is addicting. I can't wait to get out on track and actually use it. I've never owned a car with a handbrake like that before. So that is awesome. It worked flawlessly. I'm super excited about that as well. The bleed, everything is perfect the first time, which almost never happens. I've heard a lot of people complain about the bleeding procedure, but I think I figured out the way to do it right. The second one is that my wheel bearings are absolutely shot. So they actually kind of started to go bad at the end of my last video. I don't know if you guys picked up on it or could hear them or not. But I confirmed, I put the car up in the air and I can actually move the rear wheels, both of them, like a quarter of an inch. Like they are blown. So I thought about stealing some off of one of my parts cars, but this is a drift car. I want to just get high quality new wheel bearings. So I'm going to go ahead and get those ordered. That being said, I decided I am just going to wait and install the NRG quick release and steering wheel in another video. This one can end up being kind of a how-to install on that particular handbrake. So with all that said, I appreciate you guys watching as always, and I'll see you on the next one.